This is a slap in the face of our hard-working Guyanese by the PPP government. Two, the use of work contracts to recruit public servants from other countries is a devious stratagem by the PPP to suppress wages and benefits for local workers as well. Under the PPP, this stratagem, foreign recruitment of workers, will likely spread to the education system and the wider public service. Guyanese workers will end up being second-class workers in their own country. And three, the government is trying to secretly introduce foreigners into our society with total disregard of the views and concerns of the people of Guyana. It should not be missed by Guyanese that the choice of Bangladeshi and Sri Lankan workers is deliberate, since as citizens from the Commonwealth, in 1 year, these migrants will become eligible to vote in Guyana. Consequently, this is a clear attempt by the PPP regime to use migrants to boost its fading popularity in its traditional strongholds. It is important to note that a government in coming to power in 2020 deliberately closed the Charles Rosen nursing school in Linden, thus preventing the training of health workers. In addition, there are many young people who can be trained to become health workers. The PPP strategy seems to be to underplay health workers and public service generally, leave them in poor working condition, and to reduce the training of Guyanese to fill these positions. The government clearly is creating the conditions for health workers and public servants to migrate so that they can replace them with foreigners who they are likely to exercise control over. The government needs to desist from this destructive strategy and create conditions conducive to Guyanese wanting to be health workers and public servants and remain in Guyana. We therefore call for a halt to this process. The government should be doing the following. One, ensure that the government and the trade unions agree to a multi-year pay package for health workers, teachers, and other public servants through collective bargaining. Two, table a policy paper on immigration and migration in the National Assembly for scrutiny, discussion, and a consensual approach to these issues. Three, the government must provide reliable data on the number of migrants and foreign workers in Guyana. Four, restore the law as it relates to the issuance of birth certificates so as to ensure transparency, accountability, and the security of the Guyanese society, and end the present approach in which anyone can sign a document making questionable characters eligible voters. There is need for a proper system of making migrants eligible to vote in Guyana. Migrants' presence in Guyana, if not properly handled, has serious implications for the country's political stability and social cohesion. It must be recalled that we have a territorial controversy with Venezuela, and therefore we have to be security conscious at this stage. The question of importing migrants take on ever greater proportion when it is noted that Vice President Jagdeo has been accused of bribery and corruption and is a key actor in the decisions of government. Migrants importation is teamed with potential for corruption and political manipulation. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the floor for questions on the press statement, of course, by the raise of hand, and after which we'll take any other questions. So, questions on the press statement. Dennis Chabot.
Mr. Norton, what legal recourse, if any, is open to your party to challenge the whole recruitment of migrant workers so that your concerns can be addressed?
I think that there is scope for resorting to the law. The Constitution gives certain rights to the Guyanese, including the right to work. And you cannot have high levels of unemployment, capacity to train, and you are importing workers in the society.
How do you measure up your concerns about the hiring of migrant workers, given the fact that the immediate concern is that there is a steep brain drain as far as health workers are concerned? I think there is a severe shortage facing the Georgian Public Hospital as well as a number of other public health institutions. How does one go about dealing with that immediate concern of bridging the employment gap?
The immediate concern can be dealt with. First, you have to give them proper wages and salaries. You have to give them proper working conditions. This is not a case where Guyanese workers are leaving just for the sake of leaving. This is a government that has refused to give them a livable income. And so it is the government that is forcing them out. And so the government can rectify the problem by changing their approach. Many Guyanese who are overseas would like to come home. What they want is proper working conditions. They want in this country where shortly it will be 60,000 US dollars per person based on per capita calculations, to be able to benefit from that. What in essence you're seeing is the government pushing people into poverty so that they migrate. Explain to me, how is it you were saying to teachers, you have to wait until 2027 for a better deal, but you proceed to offer $700 and $900 US dollars a month with accommodation, etc. And in the section of the document which speaks to children, it says it doesn't matter how many, so you will be placing burdens on the education system, etc. This is clearly a strategy by the government to force public servants out, to be able to bring people that they control politically. Look, all of this has got to be taken against the backdrop of the dwindling numbers in PPP stronghold, their lack of popularity. Everywhere they go in, even in their strongholds, they are being rejected. And so I think the aim is to replace those Guyanese who they think will vote against them.
Questions on the press statement?
Good morning, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Now, the recruitment policy, I noticed after there was some talk about the Bangladeshis, they said now this recruitment policy would be extended to people from all around. What is there in the Constitution which guarantees deal with the issue of Guyanese being refused access to the nursing situation and foreigners are coming to replace them?
It constitutes a violation of their human right. And one of the human rights people have is the right to work. As citizens, they're entitled to have jobs above foreigners. Why is it you create a local content regime for the oil and gas sector, but you are not prepared to give Guyanese the opportunity to work first? They are talking even about bringing truck drivers. You can take a lot of these young people that you're giving 20,000 and bribing to do nonsense and train them for those jobs. There are many young people who apply to the health sector and are being refused. And mind you, it is not just training, it is maintaining those workers. And so to maintain those workers, you have to create the conditions for them to stay. And that is what the government is running from. But the Constitution provides adequate coverage for Guyanese. It's a question of us pursuing it in law.
And if I may add, Adam, I was looking at the advertisement, if I may term it as that, that has been circulated,
Look on board.
which speaks to the salary being US $700 to US $1,000 plus overtime. And then I saw that there would be no income tax deduction and some other benefits that will basically show that these persons you are seeking to bring in will be treated better than the ones that we have. And that is something to worry about. How can you advertise to bring in into the Guyanese free workers and treat them way better than the ones that we have? I saw things like free accommodation and so on, and our nurses are not treated with that good treatment, if I may term it as that, in comparison to what our nurses are getting. And that's something that we have to also pay attention to. And I hope the nursing population of Guyana is paying attention to what this regime is all about in terms of basically bringing people to not only add to the complement, but really it's like a replacement measure. And you would understand it can also be looked at from a perspective of race. I'm sorry that I have to go down this road, but it's the reality. When you look at the dominance of our nursing fraternity, and you look at where they're looking to bring in from, and you can see that it's for me it's an attempt to change the racial dynamics of our country, because I think after 1 year, these people are subject to also be a part of our electoral process. They can seek to be a part of our country and to comfortably live like Guyanese, given the laws that exist. So it is something that is really, really frightening. If I am to put it into a one-word definition, I think it's very, very frightening.
I also think that we call for a migration policy. If you bring in migrants to satisfy a particular sector, they should not have the general conditions of being a Commonwealth citizen in Guyana. That wasn't the intention. And so those contracts should state specifically that they are not allowed to be involved in the political process seizing Guyana. Additionally, let me remind people that Vice President Barrett Jack rant and went on when we said, as part of our people-centered development strategy, that people paying less than 100, earning less than 150,000 should not be made to pay taxes. He said that Ghana cannot afford that. But now you're saying that you're giving these people good living conditions, but you're also saying they are not going to pay taxes. This is lunacy, put briefly.
Thank you. Any other questions on the press statement?
On the same press statement, if nobody else is ready. The Guyana-Venezuela issue, and Venezuela is at Essequibo, Venezuelan state. My question to you is, have you been able to ascertain the reaction of the government to this development? To my mind, the government appeared to be very complacent.
The government has mishandled the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy in every sense. I recall when speaking to President Irfan Ali, I warned him of the dangers of parachute democracy. Diplomacy, meaning a head of state or some senior body just parachutes into a capital and believe that they can achieve their objectives. If you look at what happened at the Interparliamentary Union, where, first of all, I think the government was misplaced to be involved in a resolution dealing with democracy in Venezuela when you have a controversy with this country? Why would you, if you're a sensible government, want to be involved in the domestic affairs of Venezuela while you're dealing with the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy? I thought that was misplaced. But what is worse, diplomacy, as I understand it, you have a foreign ministry, you have agencies, you carve your policies, you identify the programs you want to be involved in, and then from the bottom up, you do your diplomatic work so that by the time you arrive at a conference, you would have mobilized the support for Guyana based on your structured work. Clearly, they flew to this conference, went with a motion, a resolution, and didn't do the work. And common sense should have said to them, Ghana should not have been sponsoring a motion like that. Other countries could have. But the People's Progressive Party does not understand diplomacy. Let me also make this point. We had called for a council on foreign relations so that these issues can be discussed and they obtain the benefit of the opposition ideas and support on these issues. We also called for a border commission, all of which were rejected, and now they are mishandling it to the point where they are putting into question even our case before the International Court of Justice. And so, because this government is transactional and they don't believe in proper, quiet diplomacy, they are making a mess of our foreign policy at this stage. Now, we had recommended to them that after, and I said this in my budget presentation, that once we were through here, there should be a clear program to go to the various capitals and put information in newspapers to educate people in the world on the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy. They have done none of that. And so the government, by its actions, is giving away Guyana's patrimony. They are compromising the Essequibo. We have said to them there's need for a structured approach to development in the areas. There is need for a border community development program so that those border countries can experience development, they can be engaged with information, so you have a proper approach both internationally and domestically. Clearly the nuances of diplomacy would have missed the People's Progressive Party.
Thank you so much. Mr. Norton, as it pertains to your opening statement, the hypocrisy of which the PPP is approaching the 500 plus workers from Bangladesh, do you recall, and I'm sure you do, how they treated the Haitians when it came to allowing Haitians to work in Guyana? Do you wish to address that sort of blatant hypocrisy? And the other question is, I'm not sure whether you answered it earlier, but do you suspect that the PPP regime is using these migrants from Bangladesh and maybe Pakistan and India and Venezuela to prop up the voters list?
Well, I do believe that. In fact, at one of the registration centers, I think it is called the Gin, we had to make objections because Bangladeshis who are not here for a year were turning up to register. But having objected, I think they hold on that. But all they would have to do is wait until they arrive at a year, and then automatically they can register. And they are putting Bangladeshis and other people's life at risk. Because when Guyanese see them doing these nonsense, it angers them. And I believe that the PPP regime is fighting for a confrontation in this country. And I see this as part of the confrontation that they are seeking. They are not only hypocritical, they are strategic in trying to create instability in this country so that they can maintain political power. The PPP has always been hypocritical. Remember, this is not the first attempt. And so what we are seeing is a direct attack on the rights of Guyanese. And the health workers who are present in the system will find themselves in a position where foreigners are going to be coming, making more money than them, and then there's going to be an antagonism between the local workforce and the foreign workforce, which is what I think the PPP is looking for. So that has to be dealt with. It is my sincere hope that the trade unions will work to mobilize Guyanese workers against this move. You cannot bring Bangladeshi, bring whoever you want to bring, and pay them higher than our workers with the same expertise. It is not only hypocrisy, it is disrespectful, and it is a manifestation of the incompetence and divisiveness of the People's Progressive Party.
A question from me.
Go ahead.
There are reports that Venezuelans are currently working at the Georgetown Public Hospital. To my mind, if you're a foreigner, you need a work permit. Has the party check on this issue and verify whether the employment of Venezuelans at Georgetown Public Hospital is legitimate?
Well, this is a lawless government. It's a secretive government. It is very difficult for you to check. But information emanating from the Ministry of Home Affairs suggests that they do not really seek work permits. I said when I was coming in the country, I saw, I don't remember if it was Sri Lankans or Bangladesh being given special preference. You move them from the back straight to the VIP, while Guyanese of different levels have got to wait. Now I will ask the Shadow Minister Health to investigate the total situation at the Georgetown Hospital, and then we'll take it from there.
Let me add to this Venezuelan issue. You would recall, Adam and members of the press, that in the National Assembly, a question was asked concerning the number of Venezuelans in Guyana, and I think that the answer was somewhere around 21,000 or thereabout that was provided to us. I am aware that at a press conference, Second Vice President Jagdeo, I think, used the number 40,000. So clearly, the country does not have a finite figure as to the number of Venezuelans in Guyana. We understand clearly that there are people who were born in Venezuela, but they have they may have a parent that is Guyanese, and there are many Guyanese also who were in Venezuela and came home. But there is still no structure in place by this government, either at the level of Ministry of Foreign Affairs or Ministry of Home Affairs, surrounding a documentation to show how many people are coming into this country, where they are going, and what is their occupation or what they're engaged in. Now, concerning these workers that you said could very well be Venezuelans, I wouldn't doubt you, because when you look at this 10 days workers program that the government is running under the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, there is no structure again to show or present in terms of what they are doing, what kind of work they are doing, and what they're engaged in. All you have is a total number of people associated with respective areas, and they are being paid $40,000 for the 10 days work. And you can't guarantee or verify if they are all Guyanese, and if it is Guyanese who are benefiting in total from this. All the government has to do, if they want us to believe that they are based on transparency and accountability, is to lay the cards out on the table Be honest, be transparent. Show us what it is that is out there. What is it that you're hiding? What do you have to hide? It is a clear ploy by this, a clear plot by this government to try their best to see how they can secure themselves and cement themselves at the next elections. And that is why they are treating what I will say people that are, or one can conclude, somewhat in their eyes favorable to them, and they're getting the preferential treatment. It is really, really frightening. I said that earlier and I'm saying it again. It is a frightening situation on the ground.
Mark, on the question of the Haitians and government's treatment, from the time this government came to power back in 2020, they were going after the Haitians. Nigerians are meeting you and complaining that at the immigration office, they have applications in which they satisfy all the conditions. In one case, a man has his wife is a Nigerian. He did everything in keeping with the law, and they just would not deal with the documentation. So they are hypocrites. I said at the rally in Linden that this government has no moral right to be involved in anything in Haiti. They have, in a structured way, one of the few things they do in a structured way, ensure that it is difficult for Haitians to come to Guyana. And whenever Haitians come, you know it is a PPP man linked to trafficking in Brazil. That permission is given. And so they come, they go to Brazil, and then they are trafficked to Brazil. So the whole approach is one that is aimed at ensuring Haitians don't enjoy the rights as members of CARICOM, ensuring Nigerians don't enjoy the rights as part of the Commonwealth. But at the same time, you can do it for Sri Lankans, you can do it for Bangladeshis. The objectives are clear.
I have a follow-up question, if possible.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, not really a follow-up. It's the Venezuelan issue. In light of what Maduro has done, claiming the entire Essequibo part of Guyana, have you received any communication from Irfan Ali concerning discussing the serious matter? And has the opposition registered its concern directly with the Venezuelan ambassador to Guyana?
No, it is the government's responsibility to do that. Your opposition has got to be very, very careful that we don't go complicating an issue. It is the government's responsibility to call in the Venezuelan ambassador and read the riot act. Or if it warrants, chase him out of Guyana. That is a government's responsibility. So the opposition is not involved. In terms of engaging the president, I have had no call from the president. And I think the president should be afraid to call. We supported Guyana. We supported the government and people of Guyana as it relates to dealing with Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy. We had agreed in the meeting between the president and the opposition that the Parliamentary Sectorial Committee on Foreign Affairs will meet regularly to deal with the issue. The government has failed to convene it, which suggests they do not want opposition engagement. If the president engages now, we have to have a signed document on what we will do, how we will do it, and when we will do it. Because the president is clearly dishonest in his approach to the opposition and to the people of this country. And you're seeing the foreign policy flaws. I had warned the government in Parliament that they need to draw a distinction between environmental protection and conservation. I look at the interview of which I was a part with the president, and you saw a man who is at sea because the government did not clearly define their international environmental position. Guyana, since the late 80s, it was agreed that environmental space will be provided for developing countries to exploit their resources while at the same time paying attention to the environment. It is in that context, at the UNCED, United Nations Common Environment and Development, the first one, it was agreed that there are differentiated responsibilities. And his response should have been, clearly we have the right to develop. We also must pay attention to the environment, and that the developed world has more responsibility because of their historical role. And so he would have been able to carve a situation where you are pursuing your economic development as it relates to oil and gas, and at the same time showing concern for the environment and promoting sustainable development. But he resorted to arrogance and a lack of knowledge, and in my opinion, come over as one who is incompetent and cannot deal with the complexities of international relations, much less international environmental relations.
Given that Venezuela has decided that Essequibo is now Venezuelan, and given that a capital has been identified, would you recommend that they remove all Venezuelans from those border communities, given that some believe that the presence of Venezuela is actually a mini invasion?
Again, in my parliamentary budget presentation, I made it very clear and at a press conference that because of the security threat, Venezuelans should not be allowed in the Essequibo, especially in large numbers. Barra Jagdo, in his normal stupidity, portrayed as if we are anti-Venezuelans, anti-migrants. Nobody is anti-migrant, but you have got to, in dealing with your national security interests, take the measures that will reduce your vulnerability. If you have Venezuelans who you cannot monitor in the Essequibo, you are threatening our security. When I spoke with President Irfan Ali, they did say that they were monitoring and the CID and them were doing a good job. But every time a crime occurs with the Venezuelans, you are seeing that they had a violent background in Venezuela, which means they are being allowed to come and you are not paying attention to their background, and therefore the government, by its approach, is inviting criminality to Guyana. Now, I'm not saying all Venezuelans are criminal. That cannot be true. What I'm saying is if you had a proper system of checking, getting their background, then you would not have the amount of persons that were involved in gangs coming to Guyana and carrying out crimes. And again, it shows the incompetence of the People's Progressive Party.
So where does the opposition stand in all of this? I mean, we're talking about the issue. The government is not engaging us in anything. What can the opposition parties do on the ground, for example, to see that there is some semblance of decency, of normalcy, and of protection.
And when you say a protection of who, Guyanese?
Yes, you're protecting ourselves if you move to Venezuela. So
Okay, we have made calls to the government to do what is right. The government clearly doesn't want to do what is right. Now, this is an issue of national sovereignty. The only option that is left to us, really, or the main option, is to mobilize the Guyanese people against this government, first with restricting their actions and ultimately with getting rid of them.
Thank you.
I have a quick follow-up, please. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Or should we move on? Yeah, it's pertaining to the amount of Venezuelan nationals who have recently registered. We know that the last time, which was months ago, we saw the eagerness of JAGDEO to have these persons registered, regardless of whether they're connected to Guyana through some parental connection. Have you, the party recently, or the opposition recently checked the numbers of Venezuelan nationals who have registered to vote in Guyana?
Okay, we have been checking. For instance, in the quarantine, we know the number don't exceed 6 from our scrutineers. But we know at the back of Irish, they've put a lot of Venezuelans. We know on the highway, they've put a lot of Venezuelans. You are not seeing a significant increase in Venezuelan registration. But we do know, and we are monitoring, because we anticipate that sometime they will try to have this influx and have them register. That's the first point I want to make. What we have noted is that in the Rupununi, they are going over to Brazil and finding people of Guyanese background and heritage and bringing them over to register. That we have been addressing, because we also believe that the government wants us to focus on Venezuelans while they use the opportunity to bring others. So we are looking in all directions. Whenever you hear JAGDEO saying something, he's doing something else. And so he has this tendency to focus everybody on Venezuelans. And then he can slip in Bangladeshi, Sri Lankans. We have to look at it in a comprehensive way and not become obsessed with Venezuelans per se. There are Guyanese parents coming back from Venezuela with children who are being registered, and they are entitled to. But we have not seen, at least as yet, from all our scrutineers across the country, a mass registration. That doesn't mean we rule it out. We'll continue to monitor. And I think they have another dilemma. They already have the list at 708,000. Out of population is 750,000 Guyanese. You already got on this list 708,000. So I think they're in the dilemma of, if they do what they want to do, we could have more Guyanese on the electoral list than Guyanese that exist in Guyana. So we are monitoring it, but we think that is one of the things that is affecting them. In fact, I believe it is in that context, JAGDEO called for the removal of the dead from the voters list. And if you know, they have right now in all these communities, they are paying people to find out who is dead. And since they have the apparatus at their disposal, they seem to be going more in the direction of identifying the African Guyanese that have died and seek to take them off the list by applying for a death certificate to remove them. And since they are in charge of that is one of the ploys one of the approaches they seem to be taking. And again, we are watching it and countering what they're doing.
Apart from monitoring, Mr. Norton, has an official report been made directly to the Minister of Home Affairs and the chairperson of GCOM in order to register the opposition concerns about these, not just Venezuelan nationals who have just arrived in Guyana, but nationals from other places who are now currently registered to vote under questionable circumstances?
If we have recently engaged, earlier we did, but recently we did not engage the Elections Commission. But our commissioners are kept abreast and they raise these issues at the Elections Commission. And you would see from Comrade Alexander's writing, he's on top of it and dealing with it.
I believe I'll take my last question on the press statement now. Any other of that?
Yes, I wanted to follow up on an earlier question, Mr. Norton.
One second.
You did say that there is scope for legal action concerning the importation of migrant labor, but definitively, can you say to take legal action and could you elaborate on some of the elements?
Our legal personnel will have to elaborate on the elements of it. I will engage our legal people and they will advise on how we move on this issue. I don't want to run out there making comments. While I did some law, I'm not a lawyer. And I do believe, like I said at last press conference, on these matters, we should be guided by the competent persons.
So at the minimum, you don't have a time frame yet?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Mr. Kurt Campbell.
Good morning, everyone. My question is not on the statement, so if you're going off of the statement, I can go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I will open the floor for any other questions. Now you can go ahead since you're there, and then I'll take the question from in the room.
Thank you very much. My question is for both Mr. Norton and Mr. Mahaipal. This morning, Executive Member Roysdale Ford announced his run for the leadership of the People's National Congress Reform. Firstly, I wanted to ask Mr. Norton if he knows of anyone else challenging him for the position of leadership. And secondly, I would like to ask Mr. Mahaipal directly whether he has interest in also running for leadership of the party.
Okay. Let me start by saying this party is a democratic party. Anyone can run for leadership of the party. But this party is also a politically sensible party. A lot of party members speak to me, and there are certain things they are looking for in the leader at this stage. One of them is the PPP must have nothing on you so that they can use it to their advantage. You must not be involved in any oil scam or there's any document left in the government drawers that can be used to control you. And I'm one of the persons who stand out as somebody whose integrity is intact and the government has nothing on me. I believe that as a political party, our membership is very politically intelligent. And so it is the democratic right of anyone to run for leadership of the party, and we will not deprive them of their right. The next point I want to make, that you said that, is that there's a false notion out there about primaries. And the presentation this morning is a manifestation of lack of knowledge of the PNC. PNC people, pay attention to your knowledge of the party. And the PNC members will know that there is no provision in the Constitution for primaries. We now go to why primaries occurred when it occurred years ago. For the first time in the history of the PNC, the leader of the PNC said then, Robert Corbyn, he was not running. And since there was not a Congress coming shortly, the party through a motion, I think moved by, by the time it would have been Gillian Burton and seconded by somebody, passed a motion to go to primaries because the party leader was not running. There are some people who don't have knowledge and purporting to be leaders in this party running around speaking about the presidential primaries. It's a true manifestation that they have not yet arrived at the point where they have the knowledge of the party to lead this party. So I want to make it very, very clear. The people in the party are aware of the conditions under which they were primaries. And then when you can insinuate that even the wider Guyanese society should be involved in primaries, you probably got a PPP agenda. The PPP has more resources, more people to send. If you hold primaries that are open to the public, all the PPP will do is send their people to vote for the candidate that they, the PPP, want. Again, it's a manifestation of a lack of understanding of the PPP. And then, if those who purport to want to be leaders in this party know the political history, there was a time when the UF was open for grabs, and the PPP sent its members and put the leadership they wanted in the UF, and they ended up being with the PPP. And when you make comments like you will bring all the small parties in, you obviously lack political experience, because you would have seen that all the parties, small parties that emerge, end up lining up behind the PPP. It is for that reason we had created a coalition so that the forces that are aligned to the PPP do not come in. And so in some regard, I see what is happening here as part of the PPP scheme. And may I say we know about this before, because an activity was held in which the architect, Madam Amna Ali, announced to the group that they were raising funds for Roysdale Ford to run against Norton, when a lot of the people there were under the impression that they just went to a barbecue. So look, this party, a knowledgeable party, elections are done in the party, and we are not worried. The democratic process will occur, and at the end of it, we will see who the PNC members vote for, and I have no doubt that it will be me. However, there are those who are concerned that it is occurring at a time when we have the PPP back to the wall, and it might serve the PPP interest rather than the interest of the People's National Congress reform.
Kurt, good morning. This party has over 200 groups across the length and breadth of Guyana, and even in the diaspora. And the process requires one to be nominated. And I believe that I am aptly qualified to run for leader of this party. I believe I satisfy all the requirements, and I believe I am very experienced when it comes to the party's structure and its workings. And if groups from this People's National Congress reform see me fit and they nominate me for such a position, I will take into serious consideration their nomination and make a decision at the right time. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up from Mr. Mahaipal and also Mr. Norton. Outside of the group's nomination, you say, what is your specific interest? Are you interested in the post?
Well, if I may go before the leader, as I said to you, it's not just about a matter of having an interest. It's about the party having that confidence and the groups having that confidence in you. I would remind you, and I believe Newsroom did cover this story in 2018 when I was elected to the Central Executive Committee of the party. I received at that time 1 nomination, but I went on and I won the seat. So I said this before many times too, nominations don't always win elections, right? But I'm saying to you that if I'm nominated and if the groups across the country gave that ratification or that consideration, I will consider it seriously after engaging with them and having a dialogue with them. This is not about me and my personal interest. This is about a party that I'm serving, and it's that party who must repose the confidence, and they do so through nominations and other forms of engagement. But I must tell you that I have not ruled it out, and it is under serious consideration once I am nominated. Because I can't tell you now, yes, I am, and then I'm not nominated. The party has to have that confidence first, right? The groups must give me that, must repose that confidence in me.
Finally, for Mr. Norton, I just wanted to qualify what you mean by the membership is politically intelligent. If you could qualify that statement.
I mean that our membership understands politics, they follow politics, and when you can go and talk to them on any issue, they will form their political opinion and make the decisions based on knowledge of the political process.
Williams, Guyana Chronicle. Following up on Kurt Campbell's question, does this mean that you are fully aware that there are members in the party who are running for leadership who are involved in corruption? I have 2 other questions after that.
Well, if you infer that from what I'm saying this to you, let me repeat it. I came to the leadership of this party campaigning on the fact that I was not tainted by corruption and that all and sundry know that Aubrey Norton has served this party in various positions, and there was never an inquiry into me and my actions. There are some who are running that there are written inquiries on them, and the Guyanese know that. The membership knows it as well.
All right. The opposition has been accused of being incoherent because
I
of
hear that.
the opposition has been accused of being incoherent because of the different views of its members. Some persons have concluded that this is the case because you are unwilling to take advice and you govern the party with an iron fist. Could you say if this is indeed the reason for the incoherent views, or do the members meet regularly to discuss matters of national interest?
Well, we meet and we discuss matters of national interest. Some of the members of the party, let me give you the background to how we got here. That might help you. I was not leader of the party. I was a member of the executive. Mr. Granger was leaving, and there was an open floor. I ran against Jeff Harmon and Richard Van West-Charles. And the party unanimously elected me. Well, not unanimously, in a landslide, elected me as leader of the party. Now, ever since then, we have been involved in discussions. There are some persons in the party, and I could show you recently, who make it their duty to create the impression that there isn't discussions. We have discussed in this party and further afield the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy at length. Yet one person who has no responsibility for foreign affairs goes out and make comments, and then the person with responsibility for foreign affairs who consulted with me went out and made comments. Now, there is not much you can do when ambition is more important than the party's interests. And so I do not believe it has anything to do with discussions in the party. Because in this particular instance, I discuss with the person what is the party position and why it should be the party's position. And the other thing too is the absence of institutional knowledge. If you were not in the party over the years that these discussions were occurring, you would not have an idea of what is happening. And so you go and you write in the era of social media looking for popularity rather than working towards a coherent foreign policy. So it has to do with ambition. It has to do with lack of institutional memory. It has to do with the way in which the system evolved in recent time. I believe once we go to the Congress, the people elect the leadership, then it will be a totally different ballgame.
When asked on Hard Talk about what could be done to eradicate poverty and address cost of living, you claim that nothing is being done by this government, but offered no specific examples of what you would do differently. Could you say what are some of the specific policies you would pursue, given that the government already removed over 200 taxes, subsidized fuel costs, etc.?
It is not true that the government removed 200 taxes. It's garbage. But let me say this to you. That's a misquoting of what I said. I said that in both budget presentations, we outline clear approaches to dealing with the cost of living, to dealing with poverty, and the government did not deal with any of them. I am inviting you to go back to those two presentations, and you will see at least 20 proposals to deal with poverty, and I think 9 or 10 to deal with cost of living, plus our press conferences. So you should know as a journalist that you tend to answer the questions that you were asked. He did not ask me to outline what is it we said we will do. But it is in writing. Well, I'm saying to you, it's in the parliamentary presentation. If you want, I can extract them and have you look at them. But I don't remember all 20 offhand and all 10 of the cost of living offhand. But I do know that we had a group that met, we discussed it, unlike the feelings that some people try to portray, and we did make those proposals for dealing with it. There are some that I remember offhand. For instance, removing all the persons from the tax roll who are 150 and below. I recall in one of the measures, we did talk about a 50-50 program in which we will take the unemployed youth, pay them $50,000 to go to school and to train so that they could fill vacancies. And there are many of those that we talk about the rent to own, where we said a lot of people don't have the resources to find upfront the money for a mortgage, and therefore the government can build houses, put them in it, do an agreement in which they pay the rent, and over the years the rent add up to the cost of the house, and the house become theirs. But there were many proposals there, and Minister Ashley Singh ran away from responding to them. And may I say, it is easy for you to say the government took measures. The Guyanese people every day, if you look at Stabrook News, are saying to you, the cost of living is high, nothing is happening for us. So whatever the measures the government is taking, clearly they are not aimed at dealing with poverty and the high cost of living.
And I want to remind you, my friend, you said that over 200 taxes were removed. And I hear a lot of people talking about 200 taxes being removed. A question was put in the National Assembly for this government to list the 200 taxes that were removed, as they claim the opposition at the time in government, APNU, AMP, had put in place. And that question cannot be answered to this date. So we keep hearing people talking about an imposition of 200 taxes, but why can't the government release the 200 taxes that they removed? Show us the 200 taxes. We have to be careful as citizens of this country not to be caught in this distraction politics that the PPP is known for, and this web of lies that keeps coming out from their mouth. It's simple, you know. Show us the 200 taxes. Just show us. Do you have a copy? I thought so too. Thank you.
Thank you. I see the hand of Ms. Davina.
Yes, good morning, everyone. This is Davina Bhagat with Country News. Mr. Norton, 3 quick questions from me. Firstly, sir, the government is presently drafting the oil spill legislation as announced by Vice President Jagdeo. What are your thoughts on this? And perhaps what are some of the issues you would like to see addressed in the law? Secondly, Exxon and government have not yet addressed how a disaster that occurs at the pipeline will be addressed in terms of
I didn't hear.
compensation for citizens.
You need to go back to the question. I didn't hear it.
Sure. I was saying, the second question?
Yeah.
Daily?
Yeah.
Okay, Exxon and government have not yet addressed how a disaster that occurs at the pipeline will be addressed in terms of compensation for citizens. We've heard that there can be explosions, gas leaks, all sorts of things that can affect the health and so on of people. Given the hazardous nature of this project, are you concerned that Guyanese may have to end up in the courts fighting for full protection as they were forced to do in terms of the oil production activities in the Stabroek block? And sir, finally for me, the country is now in its 5th year of oil production, but there's still no transparency on interest rates being charged. Does this concern you, and have you engaged the operator for the release of this information? Is it your view that Guyanese, or do you personally believe that Guyanese deserve to know this information?
That's it.
Yes, sir.
On the oil spill legislation bill, we have already said we agree that there should be a parent company guarantee because the subsidiary doesn't have the resources to do it. And we have been very supportive of that. We believe legislation on the oil spill should be done in a way. There should be mechanisms in it in which the company gives guarantee on the levels of oil spill. In other words, the operator Exxon says they use high-level technology and it's not likely. But we have seen in the world that with all the technology, oil spills occur. So we would like whatever is being done for there to be an exposure of the technology and we be told what guarantees exist that there will not be an oil spill, though we believe that there is always the possibility of an oil spill. I mean, an oil spill don't necessarily have to come from the actual drilling. We've just seen what happened in Tobago, somebody carrying the oil and a thing. So it would need to cover oil spills that will occur even outside of the drilling process. So it needs to be comprehensive. Pipeline explosion. You would recall that our position was you need to be careful with the pipeline. In fact, while before I became leader of the opposition, the government, the AP and UFC were exploring the question of the pipeline and actually had a feasibility study. When I became leader and our oil and gas committee met, we agreed and proposed that there should be ISO containerized gas rather than a focus on the on the pipe, the gas to energy pipe, which has a number of disadvantages. In the first instance, we did engage Exxon on it, and I've said before, when we first engaged them, they virtually said no, but in our second engagement, they seemed disposed to it. Yes, we are deeply concerned about an explosion. We are deeply concerned that it is close and virtually passing through communities. And so we are deeply concerned about that. We know the people might have to end up in the court, but our preference is for them not to have to go to court. Let us put the systems in place to ensure that we don't end up in that position. Because, you know, court don't bring back people life. Court don't repair the environment. And we have to look in that direction. As it relates to transparency and accountability, we believe that they should be. You would recall that in our time in government, Exxon was allowed to brief the opposition, etc. And we had clear indication that we are for transparency and accountability. And I believe that Guyanese deserve to know. We could differ on at what stage they know, but once there is an agreement, Guyanese should know.
Please permit me a brief follow-up. Firstly, on the issue of the oil spill legislation, sir, are you saying that all oil spill guarantees should be made public? And secondly, with regard to my question on Exxon's interest rates and expenses, you didn't particularly respond to whether you have engaged Exxon on the release of this information.
We haven't engaged Exxon for this year. We'll arrange a meeting and we will let Exxon know our position on these issues. We haven't engaged them since last year.
And just for clarity, are you saying that you're going to press Exxon to release these interest rates that are being charged by the company?
When we meet and determine what will be our strategic focus when we meet Exxon, that group will determine in large measure what is it we put on the agenda.
The issue of the oil spill, sir, you didn't respond for clarity. Let me just repeat. My question was, are you saying that all oil spill guarantees should be made public? Is this one of your suggestions for the legislation being drafted?
It is part of our general suggestions. Once the legislation comes, because most likely we will not be consulted, we will look at it and then we will make our recommendations as it relates to the legislation.
Do I see the hand of Ms. Rennie?
Good afternoon, everyone. Renee with Kaiser News. Mr. Norton, it has been months since auditors have alerted concerning spending totaling US hundreds of millions by Exxon. When Vice President Baratabio was asked about the findings of the audit, he suggested that the letter be written to Exxon for an explanation. Has your Oil and Gas Committee addressed these findings, and can you say if your committee plans to reach out to Exxon regarding them?
We don't need to meet out to Exxon. It's the government's responsibility to ensure audits are done. And we have made it very, very clear that the government is negligent and incompetent. And we will continue to call on the government to do what they are expected to do. So we don't have to call on Exxon to do anything. This contract gives certain rights, duties, and responsibilities to the government and those to Exxon. It is the duty of the government to ensure that they have a competent team to audit and ensure Guyanese get the best out of this agreement. So we don't have to engage Exxon on that. When we become the government, we will. But for now, we will keep calling on the government to do what they should do. But we don't see it as our responsibility to be calling on Exxon to do the things that the government should ensure be done. We have said that this government needs to recruit. They're fighting to recruit nurses where we got, people we could train. We have said to them, we need to recruit a competent firm with the personnel to allow us to properly scrutinize the audit and ensure we benefit from it. That is what we think should be done. We don't have to be, if we go to Exxon and Exxon say we ain't giving you it, we're in the PSA, we can point that we have this right to get it. We have the right as Guyanese. And it is in that context we say it is the government responsibility and the government must do it.
I'm sorry to interject, but Mr. Norton, please allow me a quick follow-up to that statement you just made. Sir, if not to engage the oil companies on the misuse of the country's oil money, what would you say is your role then in holding this company to account?
Our role is to put pressure to the government to ensure that they hold the oil company accountable. When we engage the oil company, we can raise whatever issue we want, but we will not fool ourselves that we have locus standi in the PSA. There is no such locus standi. So we will raise the issue, we will put pressure to the government, but as an opposition, we are obligated to deal, one, through the parliamentary system, through the government system, but as an opposition, we also have the right when we engage them to raise any issue which we have doing. But we must not fool ourselves. We are not a party to the PSA as an opposition. Guyana is a party by virtue of the government. So we shouldn't mix up these things at all. And mind you, if there is transparency that we're calling for, then you will have the information to further pressure the government rather than running believing that we have some locus standi based on the PSA to be holding the government, the oil company accountable. We have to hold the government accountable, and the government has to hold the oil company accountable. Unfortunately, the vice president and president seem not to want to do that.
Dennis Chabra.
Mr. Norton, what is your perspective on former U.S. President Bill Clinton's offer to the Guyanese president that should he require assistance to reach out to people in New York? Mr. Clinton is available, and I think he was also cited along with the Dominican Republic Chamber of Commerce on their perspective that the government is doing pretty much well in dealing with the country and so on. What's your overall perspective on this, and how do you intend to counter it?
Counter, I don't know what we need to counter. The world has just seen in the UN that the government isn't doing well. If you are from a country and you're hoping to invest in Guyana and do things, then you will say that the government is doing well. Who are going to ask anybody for a favor and cost them up at the same time? So it is par for the course what the Dominican Republic is doing. They are pursuing their business interests, and their interests at this stage is different to ours. We will continue to point out that the government isn't doing well. When the Chamber of Commerce say they're doing well, they're talking to their private interests, private investment interests. When we say the government isn't doing well, we are relating to transparency, accountability, the fact that people's life worse now than 5 years ago. We're dealing with the fact that the cost of living is high. We're dealing with the fact that there's increased poverty. We're dealing with the fact that there are high levels of corruption that are affecting the people of Ghana. We're dealing with the fact that the PPP regime is destroying the local government system. Many of those issues don't fall within the confines of what the Dominican Republic people are saying. They are pursuing their business interests. We are pursuing the interests of Guyana. We have our positions out there, and people know that this government isn't doing well when it comes to serving the people of Guyana. We know they are doing well when it comes to serving the elite, the friends, families, and favorites. We know we have asked them to put their assets against their income, and they are afraid to do that because of the high level of corruption. As it relates to Bill Clinton's offer, as far as I know, before engagements were made, we probably didn't carry them to the ultimate end, but it's an option that is open that will be utilized. But I'm not in this thing of saying that we will run after every opportunity. Well, wrong word. I am not into saying that because Bill Clinton said that we must take a position now, etc. We know our strategic objectives. We know what is happening. Bill Clinton will know that there's the abuse of the Guyana police force. Bill Clinton would have been in groups that have already been informed of what is occurring in this country, the politicization of the police force, the non-appointment of a chancellor and chief justice, and all the attempts to compromise the judiciary. All of that information is out there. We'll continue to provide it. Shortly, I'm going to meet the diplomatic community again, or a section of the diplomatic community, and all of these issues will be discussed. Bill Clinton is one element in the entire thing, and so the opportunity will be utilized. But I don't think we need to say that we are going to run and go to Bill Clinton. All the information is there that both Democrats and Republicans would know and have access, because we have spoken and engaged both sides in this process.
Thank you. Mr. Mark Benchmark.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I have several questions. It will just be brief. There's no A's and B's to it. The first question is for the leader. You did say that the party is democratic and therefore anyone is allowed to run, which is good. However, you painted an impression that can be considered as dangerous water, so to speak, that anyone who seeks to run against the leadership of the PNC would be considered as a PPP mole or PPP moles. Do you think that is healthy for democracy in the party? That's one. The other question I have for Mr. Mahipal. Mr. Mahipal seems to be zigzagging, whether he wants to run or whether he doesn't want to run. What is your take on Mr. Ford's announcement, one, and how would you describe the leadership of opposition leader Compton Norton? Those are the two questions. The other two questions I have directed to the leader of the opposition with regards to the recent announcement of the U.S. ambassador to Guyana, Ms. Terra, that Guyana is transforming. In other words, the transformation of Guyana is so great. Thirdly, the Chinese ambassador said that democracy is healthy, so to speak, in Guyana. But yet we have all these infractions and violations of people's rights. There is a commissioner of information who is sitting there wasting taxpayers' money and not giving out any information. Those are my four of my questions for now.
All right, let me start with the Chinese. I think you should have quoted the Chinese totally. The Chinese virtually said that there are different perceptions of democracy. The Chinese say we believe in liberal democracy in the United States. So unless you know what the Chinese are talking about in terms of democracy, you can't support them nor condemn them. What I do know is that there are two different approaches. Now, at no stage did I say anybody was a mole or insinuated that people were moles. What I said, and I repeat, One, I'm aware that the PPP is doing a number of things to create division in our party. Two, I did say that Ms. Amna Ali, who has her own agenda and has made it very clear that she will do everything to undermine the present leadership of the party, has made it clear to persons she rather to see the PPP in power than us. And therefore, that fits in to PPP activities and therefore can be considered an attempt to influence the party direction in keeping the PPP positions. I did say as well that the PPP doesn't want anyone who they don't have something on, and they're comfortable with those they have something on. And I went on to say there are a number of investigations while we were in government that are in the possession of the PPP, and therefore they can use it to achieve their objectives. So now as it relates to Guyana is transforming, nobody will doubt that Guyana is transforming. I wouldn't doubt Guyana is transforming, but transformation for who? That is the critical issue. Look, it is we who signed this PSA. The money that the government is spending is as a result of a PSA that they condemn and condemn. Any government with that kind of resources can be able to do infrastructure, etc. If you say it is transforming as distinct from transformational, they are two different things. You could be transforming, but it isn't transformational in the sense that it is changing the nature of the society and who benefit from it. It is not transformational in the sense that the people of Guyana are not benefiting. It is not transformational because there isn't equity. It isn't transformational because there isn't a proper development plan that it is following. But there is no doubt there are transformations that are occurring. If you come down the new highway, it got two names, Heroes and I don't remember the other one. If you come down those highways, you will see the area has been transformed. But if it was transformational, they would have had overflies. So people coming out of communities wouldn't have to stop and wait till this highway traffic finish. There would have been proper architectural work done so that it impacts the lives of the people in a very positive way. If it was transformational, the teachers would not have been out there striking for more money that it isn't impacting their life in a positive way. It is transforming. There is no doubt that the PPP elite is getting richer and richer. It is transforming their lives. But it will only be transformational when it impacts the life of the majority of the Guyanese. Has it changed our position from 41% poverty and brought it down to 30%? No, it hasn't. So the ambassador is correct that it is transforming the society. But like I said in the BBC interview, it is not positively impacting the lives of the people of Guyana. I just come from the Rupununi, where people are suffering terribly. There is hunger, no water in many communities, and no relief from the government. When you go into those communities, teachers live in deplorable conditions. And so don't tell us about transforming. If you take a little child and give them plenty money, they would buy all kinds of things with it. But it doesn't follow that what they buy will impact the life of the child. And so what you have is a government that has money, that is utilizing it badly and not impacting the lives of the people, giving them a livable income, etc. And so it is not transformational. I would say to you, some of what David Granger was doing was more transformational. In the indigenous communities, he was giving them the capacity to earn, and many of them started to earn. When you provide transportation to school children, you are impacting those children's lives. When you don't, that child cannot go to school. So you're building a road, but the children ain't got the means of using the road to get to school. How transformational is it when you got to be looking for health workers across the world, when you have a large percentage of your population unemployed and looking for work every day? If it was transformational, there would have been developed educational programs to train those that are untrained so that they can find jobs and impact their lives. This government is about transactions that they can benefit from. It is not about impacting the lives of the people of Guyana.
And Mark, to your questions, let me say first of all, I'm not zigzagging. I am respecting a process and a structure. There is no date for Congress as yet. We know that it will be before August 31st. There are a series of happenings that will have to unfold as we get to the Congress. And I did indicate that I am aptly qualified to run for leader of this party. I did say that I satisfy all the requirements, and I believe I'm very experienced in the party's structure and workings. It is the groups that will have that responsibility to nominate me if they see me fit. And their nominations will then be taken into serious consideration. I don't think I'm zigzagging with that. It is me saying to you right now that there is a possibility for me to run, and there is a possibility for me to support a candidate that is running. Likewise, there is a possibility of me not supporting any candidate and staying and observing and casting my ballot as the party allows me to do. It is a democratic process. It is the most democratic political party, the People's National Congress Reform, and that is why I happen to find myself in this party. It allows me as a member to decide what I want. The party empowers its membership, unlike the People's Progressive Party, where only 35 people sit around a table and one jagabat is the one who dictates how they're going to get. And we saw that with how they got Irfan Ali. Let me say, with reference to Ford's announcement, the party gives him that right to do what he did there. It is in the Constitution. It's a constitutional right of a People's National Congress reform. He's a member, he's financial, and he enjoys that right. Anybody else can do it. And if, I think your third question was, how do I rate the current leader? Let me say to you that the current leader, I'm sitting next to him here, the party membership expressed that confidence in him when they voted for him at the last biennial delegates congress. And my position in this party is for the party, and everything that I do is structured around the party, and I will work with any leader for the success of the People's National Congress reform.
And may I add this?
Sorry about that. A quick follow-up to Mr. Mahipal, who is zigzagging on my questions. Directly, I'm asking you your opinion, not the membership of the party's opinion of the leader. And with all due respect, I'm asking you directly, what is your take on the leader of the party, and also your direct position on Mr. Ford's announcement to run for leadership of the party? With all due respect, I'm not asking you the leadership and the democratic process and so forth. It's a direct question, sir. Thank you.
I don't have a position on Mr. Ford's announcement. I just happen to respect the fact that he has exercised his constitutional right to do what the party has given him that power to do. The Constitution. I don't have a position on what he has done. And reference to the leader, Mr. Aubrey Norton, he's better than any People's Progressive Party member. He has displayed the degree of competence when I compare him with Irfan Ali, when I compare him with Barrett Jagdeo, when I compare him with all the Jagabats of the PPP, he is far way better than all of them. If you're going to ask me whether he's far way better than Mr. Ford or whoever else or myself, at the end of the day, Mr. Norton has indicated that he will contest for the leadership of the party again for re-election. Mr. Ford has clearly outlined that he will contest. I have said that I am under consideration and I will take it into serious consideration once nominated. And the party will decide whether Mr. Norton is fit for re-election or Mr. Ford is fit for election or Ganesh Maipal is fit for election once considered.
Mr. Maipal, a pointed question to you. Do you support Mr. Ford or Mr. Norton?
At this point, I have not thrown my support behind anybody because, as I said, I am going to seriously consider once I am also nominated.
It appears as though, Mr. Mahipal, because if I am a member of a party and I have full confidence with my leader, there's no way I'm going to throw my hat in the race. But you are considering.
I don't think that's a fair statement, Mr. Benchcop. One would recall, and perhaps all should recall, that I came in this party under the leadership of Mr. Robert Herman Orlando Corbin. But before that, history has shown us that even Fobbs Barnum was challenged. Shows us that even Desmond Hoyt was challenged. It shows us Robert Corbin was challenged. I was supporting Winston Murray with Comrade Norton, and unfortunately he passed away. I would have loved to see him become the leader of this party, and I'm absolutely certain he would have been president and a fantastic president too. I did not support David Granger at the Biennial Delegates Congress, but he emerged as the winner, and I worked with him because my interest is in the party. I did not, after Comrade David Granger, I was a supporter of Comrade Joseph Harmon. Comrade Norton emerged as the winner of that Biennial Delegates Congress, and I'm working with Comrade Norton. And at the next Biennial Delegates Congress, the opportunity will be there for people to express their interest. It is the membership that will have to give that confidence to whoever they see fit. If I decide to run for lead, I trust they will give me. It's as simple as that.
Thank you.
And mind you, may I say this? I don't want to put anybody in any difficult political position, but I would say this to you. One of the few young persons that came to the party that is showing the level of political understanding and competence is Ganesh Maipal. And I'm not saying this.
I guess that's an endorsement, Mark.
I'm saying this to say to you that a political party has to be producing many young leaders. But those young leaders will have to learn, they will have to understand, they will have to learn the party's culture, decide whether they want to be with it or change it, and make their decisions. Now, I have said before, everyone in this party is entitled to run for leadership. And mind you, politics is a fluid thing. I recall many people who said I could never become leader of the party, and I am today. So predictions are just that.
Thank you. All right. I want to thank all of our media personnel for joining today's press conference. You have a very long weekend holiday. I hope that our viewing public will enjoy that holiday and do take the time to be conscious of what you're doing and do what you are doing in a smart and respectable way. We're seeing a lot of things happening as well on the movie. So do enjoy your weekend.